Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to share with you all of the highlights from my trip to Montreal and Toronto. I took 15 women on a tour of sustainable fashion in Montreal and Toronto, two of the most exciting cities in my country of Canada. 14 women from the US and one Canadian woman came and met me in Montreal, and we spent the next 8 or 9 days doing all kinds of just really fun and interesting things that you can only do with like-minded people, right? I could never have done this trip with my family. There's not a chance that they would have done half of the things that I was able to do with this group of really great women. Erica, our travel designer from Open Doors Travel, she and I worked on this trip for quite a long time, doing all the planning, slotting in as many super interesting and fun experiences as we could to really show off Montreal and Toronto, while also giving the participants a taste of sustainable fashion, Canadian style. So everybody flew in from wherever they were coming from. A couple of the Americans actually were able to drive up and meet us in Montreal. We checked into a really great hotel there. It's just called Delta Hotels Montreal. It was really quite nice. I got there a couple of days before all of the participants did. I took myself out for a lovely poutine dinner and then I got a good night's sleep to just make sure I felt refreshed for the trip. The next day, a few early arrivals came. My friends Kathleen and Anita, who were with me on the Italy trip, they were the first to arrive, and so we got to hang out together, just the three of us. It was really, really nice. We did a little bit of exploring of Montreal's Chinatown, and we went down into Old Montreal for a little poke around as well. Down by the Old Port, it's just a really neat area in Montreal. If you ever get a chance to go down there, it's fun to just walk around. There are lots of street vendors. We each bought a little nice something from one of the vendors. So the three of us decided we would go check out Montreal's Musée des Beaux-Arts, like the Fine Arts Museum in Montreal. And that was really, really cool because they had a lot of modern art, modern design. We got to see all kinds of interesting modern design, including some amazing sculpture. There's not a fashion exhibit, but this one dress that was made of zippers I thought was really cool. And then the next participant to arrive was somebody new to us who hasn't been on a trip with us before. Her name was Lisa, and we got to spend some time with her. We walked past the Ritz Hotel, which looks all fancy with their lights. Sherbrooke Street in Montreal is lined with beautiful old mansions and fancy apartment buildings that have been converted to hotels and some galleries and things like that. It's a really nice walk through Montreal. And then it was time for our welcoming dinner where we got to meet all of the participants. 15 beautiful women and I had dinner at Weinstein and Gavino's, which was a great little restaurant in Montreal. We had a really, really nice meal. So it was a nice, relaxed way of getting to know each other a little bit and starting to bond. The next morning, the group headed out and we got to go to our first activity, which was a quick walk to the McCord Stewart Museum. It's a pretty cool museum in its own right, but they had a fashion exhibit called Afrique Mode, or African Fashion, and holy smokes, it was beautiful. We had a guided tour of that exhibit and it really enriched the whole exhibit for us. Like, we learned so much more from this very knowledgeable tour guide than we would have just if we had walked through. We learned about different African types of weaving and printing and dyeing. That was gorgeous. And it was the whole exhibit literally wove the traditional in with the modern. So you can see so many different like traditional ways of weaving, but many of the fashion designers highlighted in this exhibit used those traditional techniques in very modern ways, and the result was just beautiful. These two were probably my favorite because they're absolutely gorgeous, but the fashion designer himself made these two outfits for himself and his wife when they got married. So they got married in these two beautiful outfits. They're both just stunning. After that exhibit, we walked around Montreal a little bit more. We actually were able to hop onto their metro system, their subway. It's quite different from any other subway system I've been on. Every single subway stop has art. There's just art everywhere in Montreal. And it's nice in their subway stations because the subway cars actually run on like rubber tires. And so it's quieter than most subway stations and you have this art to look at. It was quite nice. There's some really interesting buildings in Montreal. Again, it's that mixture of the traditional with the modern. Montreal is a very old city by North American standards. So this building, they said, was the oldest bank in North America. There's actually a museum inside this bank. Anybody can walk in. It's quite beautiful inside. And the museum itself was just a little one. We just had a quick little peek in there. But that was kind of neat to see all the Canadian money over the years and old bank books. That was kind of neat to see. And then just across from that bank is the Notre Dame Cathedral, which is completely different from the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. It's not sort of a facsimile of it. It's just its own thing, and it's quite beautiful. And I'll show you some pictures inside there in a little bit. Our weather was a little bit cold and little spots of rain here and there. On the whole, it was pretty nice. You had to have a little jacket with you, sometimes a hood up, but overall, we did actually pretty well with the weather. And then just before dinner on that first full day, our private bus drove us up Mount Royal. And that's what the city is named for, Mount Royal, Montreal. It's really, really lovely. It's tons of trees. The beautiful fall colors were just starting to come out. There's a small lake about halfway up where we stopped to take some pictures. It was just gorgeous. And then we hopped back on the bus and drove the rest of the way up to this lookout platform. There's this beautiful old building there, and then this big, huge patio out front that you can wander around on and just have a beautiful view of the whole city of Montreal. And from that viewing platform, you can see a building that has a huge painting on the side of it of one of Canada's most beloved poets and songwriters, Leonard Cohen. Then we headed back into Old Montreal, where we went for a dinner at a steakhouse and had another lovely meal. So on day 3, our private bus took us outside of Montreal, where we visited an Indigenous fashion designer whose name translates to "she who holds the sky." So that was at the Kanawake Youth Center. She took us through the process of making ribbon tote bags, and she taught us all about the significance of ribbon skirts and what those ribbon skirts mean to the Mohawk people, as well as to other Indigenous peoples across Canada. So we all had so much fun sewing our ribbon bags. Everybody got to choose which fabric, which ribbons. They had so many choices for us. That was really lovely. And then we took a group picture at the end. I'm not holding a ribbon bag because I actually gave mine to our local guide who had been with us for a few days. Her name's Lily. She's second to the left there. She hadn't ever really sewn on a sewing machine, so I actually encouraged her to sew a few of those ribbon pieces onto the bag, and it was really cute. She was like nervous to sew on the machine. It was a nice little experience. So at the end, when I finished the bag, I gave it to her, and she was so happy. So then it was time to get back on the bus, back to Montreal, where it was time for lunch, and I was dying to have Montreal smoked meat sandwich from Schwartz's Deli, which is one of the most famous delis in Montreal. And there's a giant lineup, and we thought, oh no, but that's just not going to work. And so we almost gave up on the whole idea of Schwartz's, but one very clever lady among us noticed that there was a separate door for takeout only. And so if you ever go to Schwartz's and you see that long line, that's just for people who want to get a table to sit inside. There's a whole other door if you're just getting takeout, and they just have the most scrumptious Montreal smoked meat sandwiches with the pickle on the side. You got to get the deli pickle. So good. That sandwich was like the highlight of my trip. And then after lunch, we went to some thrift stores in the Mile End and Plateau area in Montreal. Some really, really fun thrift stores. Here, Kathleen is trying on a mini skirt with Sally Ann, giving her some ideas of how she could add just a little bit of length to that mini skirt. And then we hit the Salvation Army there, which is great. And one of the ladies, I think it was Celeste, had never bought anything from a thrift store before. So out front of the thrift store, we all kind of had to celebrate the fact that she bought something from a thrift store. It was kind of a nice little moment. Everybody was cheering her on. In fact, we all got so much into the thrifting that even our bus driver, Robert, he came into the thrift store with us, and he was so excited because he bought himself a jacket that's Harris tweed, which is really primo wool from Scotland. He knew what he was getting there. He knew that that was a quality piece, and he was just pleased as punch. So it was really, really sweet to have our bus driver come in with us and do some thrifting. And there was such a fun buzz on the bus when we came out of those stores. Everybody was excited to see what everybody else bought, show off what they found. That buzz was really fun to be a part of. And then nearby, we went to some fabric stores. So this is St. Hubert's. I don't know if they say St. Hubert or Saint Hubert. So the name of the store is Tissu Saint Hubert, like St. Hubert's Fabrics. This fabric store was primo. We went running around this store and had so much fun. Like, they had really high quality fabrics that you just don't find anywhere else. So this fabric, I actually showed this in my Monday vlog. That's the piece that I bought, and it's like a printed mesh that is just so pretty. It just enchanted me and I had to have it. So the man who was working in the store, he just loved having all 16 of us running around his store, so excited about the beautiful fabrics that he very proudly had on display there. So then we went out for another beautiful dinner, and this is really where the conversations start to become really rich. Like when you've built some experiences together and now you're sitting down for a meal together, this is where friendships start to form, and those dinners are really special. So this restaurant was called Café Cherrière, and we had a lovely meal there, but we were late arriving because we had been so excited by the thrifting and the fabric shopping. We just didn't want to cut it off. So we arrived to the restaurant late, but the problem was we had tickets for the Aura Experience at Notre Dame Cathedral, which is this spectacular light show. You're not allowed to take pictures during the light show, but I got to tell you, it was magnificent. Here we are eating our dinner, and we know we got to get going because our tickets are timed, but we hadn't had our beautiful dessert yet. So do you know what they did at this restaurant? They said, that's okay. Go do your Aura Experience. We'll hold the table for you and then come back. We must have been gone like a good hour. And they held the table, and the place was busy. Like, it was amazing that they held that table for us. So we came back, had our beautiful dessert, and that was just such a lovely way to top off our evening. So then next morning, we had a bit of an early start. We had to get ourselves to the train station. Robert came early in the morning, loaded up all our bags in our little bus, and drove like the very short drive to the train station. And then we were 5.5 hours on the train, which I know sounds kind of boring and grueling, but it was actually really comfortable, very relaxing. Everybody's chatting or sleeping or reading, and the view is gorgeous. It was really actually nice to travel on the train from Montreal to Toronto. It was a lovely way to go. When we arrived in Toronto, there was a little bit of free time for that evening. People could kind of do whatever they pleased. So I went to the theater with a few people, had a lovely time there. One of my friends from university was able to join us, so that was really fun to see Heather. Everybody loved Heather and she loved everybody. But the people who didn't come to the theater, they went to explore some of the stores along Queen West in Toronto. There's lots of vintage stores, there's sewing supply stores, there's thrift stores. Like, they had a good time doing that little exploration. So everybody had a good night. And then the next day was our museum day in Toronto. So we started off with the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum, which is just a gorgeous world-class museum. But we had this docent, like this tour guide, and she was so knowledgeable. It turns out she went to the same school I did, Ryerson, back in the day before it was Toronto Metropolitan University. She was there a few years after me, but she was so knowledgeable, and so she took us through the ROM. But what she did was really brilliant. She looked at what they do have in their collection and taught us what that means about the clothing that would have been worn at the time. Like, starting with suits of armor, which I think dated back to the 1500s, I want to say, because there's no textiles. They're very, very precious little textiles that can survive that many years. So the way you learn about fashion from those times are usually paintings, sculptures, but also she taught us how those suits of armor, they had to go over the clothing of the day. And so what did that mean about the clothes that those people were wearing? And it was quite interesting. It was a different perspective on fashion history than I'd ever had before. The ROM is quite an interesting blend of art, but also natural history and also archaeological findings. And I was very proud to see that there were some totem poles from British Columbia, and these were just massive. Like, you could see it's running in the stairwell. It goes, I don't know how many floors it covers, but it looked to me like 4 or 5 stories. It was just like as far down as you could peer. So they had a few of those around. It was really lovely to see. Our tour guide also took us through this sort of Greek display and showed us what it could reveal about fashion or the way people dressed at the time. And you know what? I could have walked right through there and not noticed like a tenth of what she showed us. So along the top of the wall was this, I guess it's called a frieze, right? There are women spinning yarns and then weaving and making clothing. That was super interesting to see, and I probably wouldn't have really paid it much notice if I hadn't had that guided tour. So then we had a group photo with Donna, who was the docent from the museum. She was just wonderful, so lots of thanks to Donna at the ROM. And then next was the Batachou Museum, which is very close to the ROM. It's just a little short walk, but if you're at all interested in the history of fashion, it's really an amazing place to check out because they have 15,000 pairs of shoes that date back 4,500 years. And we went through the museum without a guided tour because it's very well laid out with, the writing that kind of goes with each of the display pieces. The only picture I took in the whole place, though, was Elton John's boots. I mean, I grew up loving Elton John. The little bit of writing there I thought was funny because it says something to the effect that these were not meant for stage. He said he would be mortified to ever wear these on stage because they were just so plain that he wore these shopping. That's what it said. I thought that was cute. And that sounds typical for Elton John, doesn't it? Yeah, I could see him wearing those shopping. And then after that, we had time to run in to Fabricland, which is at the corner of Yonge and Bloor, right in downtown Toronto. A few of us ran into that Fabricland. I bought some fabric there as well. And then we had time to hit up a Value Village. There's a Value Village like right off of Yonge Street, which is the main street in downtown Toronto. And it just looks like a little sign. It looks like it's going to be a little pokey store, but then it goes downstairs and it's actually huge. So we had some fun wandering around that Value Village. I think a lot of people scored some good pieces in that Value Village. The next day was our big outing to the Niagara region, where we started off visiting the costumer for the Shaw Festival. Now, the Shaw Festival is a big deal in that area. It's like George Bernard Shaw's, where they show his plays, but also loads of other playwrights as well. Their plays are shown at the Shaw Festival. So we started off with the costume designer from the Shaw, and she was quite brilliant. They talked quite a bit about how they're making their costuming more and more sustainable. So one thing they're doing is trying to make the dyes that they use more sustainable and more eco-friendly. So she took us through a super fun process that she called eco-printing. She had prepared these squares of cotton fabric. She had taken them through all of the steps of like removing the sizing and doing all the treating so that the fabric was ready to accept the dye that we were about to put onto it. And what we used to dye was actually plant material. She had every table laid out with different plants and leaves. And so we got to kind of lace them wherever we wanted on our wet fabric. It was so neat to see all the different configurations that every participant made. Everybody's was unique to them. And then after your leaves were all arranged, you roll it with plastic and your fabric together so that the dye doesn't leak through from one layer to the next. So you roll it up tight, tight, tight around that dowel. And then you have to place it in a steamer for, probably 30 or 40 minutes.
Nice, hey?
Oh, look at how neat that looks inside there.
Isn't that cool? It's so neat. So during that time, they had prepared for us a beautiful lunch. So we got to have lunch, just for us, and it was lovely. There were quite a few allergies among us, and they just did a beautiful lunch where everybody got something nice. This chef, his name was Jude, and we were just so grateful to him for this beautiful lunch that he had prepared for all of us. And then after lunch, we got our thingies out of the steamer, unrolled it, and revealed the beautiful prints that had been made from those leaves.
Let's find the end. There we go.
Oh gosh, I'm so excited. Hopefully this isn't like a letdown.
Right, and then we're gonna go, wah, wah. I see some things.
I do
happening.
too.
So they said some things will show.
My sticks.
One side will be like the bright side, and one side will be like the shadow side.
Boy, this unwrapping is harder than. Oh, Kathleen, that's so beautiful.
Oh, my little triangles work.
Triangles are beautiful.
Purple's a green.
Oh, wow.
Ooh la la.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, look, the red was not red. It was purple. Look at that. It started red but turned purple.
So neat.
It's beautiful.
Oh, nice.
It is. It really is.
It was just tons of fun to do, and that's quite a special keepsake. And then the kind people at Shaw Festival let us go. We had to take a little bit of a bus ride to go to their warehouse where they store all of their costumes. And they spoke to us there about how they are also trying to make costumes and props and set deck, all of that more sustainable, where instead of building new for each season and then chucking everything, they're trying to do a better job of reusing, repurposing. So this warehouse is just jam-packed with things that stage designers come there and they kind of see what they can use first before they order a new build. So this is the design manager, Lauren, who let us poke around in this warehouse and explain all of that to us. It was quite interesting. Then our bus took us right into Niagara Falls, which is breathtaking. If you've never been to Niagara Falls, you really do need to go check that out at some point, especially, I gotta say, especially from the Canadian side. Our falls are just a little bit bigger than the American Falls, and it's just a gorgeous, breathtaking sight. We even got to go on the hornblower boat, which goes right under the falls, and a lot of people got soaking wet. You could decide where you wanted to sit on the boat if you wanted to get more wet or less wet, but a lot of people really just braved the elements and got soaking wet, but it was quite a thrill. And then from there, we went to a really lovely estate vineyard called Chateau des Charmes, and it's one of the oldest estate vineyards, meaning that they grow the grapes there, they produce the wine there, and they sell it. Like, it's all done on that one big, beautiful property. So we had a guided tour of that, of the outside, the inside. We got to see where the wine barrels are stored and find out a bit more about the process. And then we got to do a wine tasting. So the non-drinkers were not excluded. They had some beautiful mocktails that were prepared for them. And the wine drinkers, we got to try a flight of 4 different wines and a little pairing with just a little morsel of a food that pairs perfectly with that wine. So that was quite interesting. It was not a lot of food. We were hungry when we left, but one little bite of food that would just match perfectly with the wine they were showing us. So that was fun.
Cheers!
Cheers! Then the bus took us back to Toronto, and people kind of grabbed a bit of dinner before going to bed because we were all a little bit hungry at the end of that day. And then for our final day of the trip, our final day in Toronto, the last day of the whole tour, we started off our day meeting up with a style consultant named Paula Angesser. She was just great. Like, she just fit right in with all of us. She was lots of fun. But what she started off with was doing our colors, which, that was popular in the 80s of getting your colors done. I never did it. Like, I always just figure I'm going to wear what I want to wear. But now the whole color theory has developed to the point where they don't just tell you if you're a fall or spring or summer, whatever. They tell you your season, but also if you are temperature, like warm or cool or bright or dark, I think. You know what? I was not a true believer when we started, but you kind of, after doing 15 of us, you kind of do start to get the eye of how those colors lift somebody's face and elevates their look a little bit. Lots of fun to go around the whole table of all of us and just figure out what colors are best for people.
My ladies, what do we think? Cool or warm? Warm. Spring or fall?
Oh, I did.
Do I have to say anything?
No, it's fall.
She looks gorgeous here. Fall. It defines more her face.
I think that.
Yes, you are fall.
Everybody now has their color palette of what colors look best on them. I'm a warm autumn, so that's my color palette. I'm still going to wear what I like, but I'll just use this as a little bit of guidance. And it was just fun. Then Paula took us to do a little bit more thrifting. And this time we went to one of my old haunts in Toronto from when I lived there years ago. It's still there. It's called Courage My Love in Kensington Market. And Kensington Market is not like one big building of a market. It's a neighborhood. And Courage My Love has been there since I lived in Toronto in the 90s. So it was a lot of fun to go and see what we could find there, grab a little bit of lunch in Kensington Market. I ran to Tim Hortons and grabbed a box of Timbits to share with everybody because it was our last chance for them to try, of course, the famous Canadian Tim Hortons. And then we had to pile all back on the bus and drive a little bit across town to the Toronto Sewing School. And this was the culmination of the whole trip. We ended with 3 hours, a 3-hour session at the Toronto Sewing School where we could take all of our thrifting and fabrics that we had bought over the trip and do some upcycling together. And that was just a dream come true. It was so much fun.
Using the pink, that's where the pink comes in. I think that's a really fun idea. Well, what's the worst that could happen? So if you start with a cut, and then you'll make a rectangle of how big you want it, how wide. Give yourself a little bit of extra length, and then we'll attach. It's good that the embroidery is here because that's going to hide you know, a little bit of we need some wiggle room.
Okay.
So cut the piece bigger than you think you're gonna need.
Okay.
Because bigger
Okay.
Thank you.
So it took me right back to my classroom days. So I wasn't sewing. I was just buzzing around the whole room, checking in with people, sort of offering whatever help I could offer, and just helping everybody sort of steer their projects in a way that was going to get it done and look amazing. On the way there, I did overhear in the back of the bus somebody saying, 3 hours? What can you possibly get done in 3 hours? But it was actually amazing. They got loads done in 3 hours.
So it might be just best to take over the whole sleeve. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll just get it all perfect.
Okay.
So where you really need to pick right now is probably like from however long you want it. You're gonna pick that whole inseam and then quite
So for the waistband, I figure I'd need 2 of those, and then I would just serge them around the top and run the.
So if you bring your strip here and then open it out, so you'll be sewing your strip together like that. So you've got a real seam on both ends, right? Yeah. Oh, look at those. Oh my gosh, that's pretty. Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm thinking put the sleeves in about that much.
Yeah, let's start with the wider. We can always take off more.
really a lot.
Is it hot up here? Is anybody else hot?
You're just feeling stressed.
I'm just feeling it. That might be enough.
There were a few projects that were start to finish done in those 3 hours, but most people got a good start on their projects, and then they finished them as soon as they got home, and they were sending us pictures to our WhatsApp thread within 24 hours of being home. So that was really neat to see what everybody had done, and so much personality came through in those projects. The one project that was most complete, in fact, perfectly complete, was from Kathy, who had thrifted this long shirt that was maybe a little bit too narrow. And so she cut it up the back, took a piece off the bottom, made that triangular inset. The sleeves were not a good length for her, and the collar had been weird. So she had also thrifted a shirt that was a Liberty print. And so she just used one of the sleeves from that shirt. She's keeping the rest of it for a whole other project, but she cut strips from that Liberty shirt and ruffled those strips and then set it into the collar and then around the bottom of the sleeves. Just dynamite. It looked so nice on her. So again, we took a group photo outside of the Toronto Sewing School with the young woman who owns the business. She not only owns the Toronto Sewing School, which is on the second floor, but she also owns the sewing machine and repair shop on the main floor. And I was so impressed because that's quite an undertaking, isn't it? She was just dynamite, very welcoming, welcomed us into the space, checked in on us, see if we needed anything, and then just kind of let us have at it. So I just really, really want to wish her well, because holy smokes, that's phenomenal that somebody of that generation cares enough about sewing to really try to keep it going for those of us who love to sew, but then also to educate the next generation of sewers. Like, that's pretty special. And then back on the bus, and then we headed over to the CN Tower for our farewell dinner, which I did not take any pictures of during the dinner. We did take some pictures outside the CN Tower and looking up at it. It really is a breathtaking sight. If you haven't been to Toronto, that's worth it right there. Like, just seeing the CN Tower. It was the tallest building in the world for a long, long time. And it was very fun and exciting because it was right in the World Series, right? We were right there during the World Series. There was not a game on. The game was actually happening in LA, but at Rogers Centre, which is right at the base of the CN Tower. Rogers Centre was having a viewing party, so people could pay, I think it was $15 to just go in there and watch the game on the big screen. So it was just hopping. It was just a really exciting buzz going on through the whole city. A little bit of a heartbreaker at the end of that World Series, not going to lie. We were a little bit heartbroken, but still really, really proud of our Blue Jays and what they accomplished there. So anyway, back to the whole point was we did have a beautiful farewell dinner up in the revolving restaurant in the CN Tower. It was really just the perfect spot for our farewell dinner. So we got back to the hotel, lots of hugs and promises to keep in touch, and really a nice send off. So now we've got our Team Canada WhatsApp thread. So just like with the Seattle retreat and the Italy trip, that is going to live on where people can just keep in touch with that and post pictures and show what they're up to. And that's a really, really nice and special part of a trip like this, is that it does build friendships with people that love the same things that you love. That's one of the main reasons I love to do these trips, is to just be able to do those things with like-minded people, but also to form those friendships. And so I wanted to just give you the little heads up that the next trip is to London, England, where, holy smokes, there is so much to do in London, England. We're going to spend pretty much the whole time right in the city. I looked at doing different day trips. We might do one or two, but honestly, you could spend a month in London and not run out of things to do. So I've been to London, but only like a couple of days here and there. I'm really excited to really dive into that city. The registration is not open yet, and I did promise my community in Catherine's sewing room, my little online community in school, that they would be the first to have access to that registration. I'll give them a couple of days head start, but then I'll post it here on my YouTube channel. So if you want to be one of the first to get that information about registration for the London trip, and if you would like to join our online community on school, we would love to have you. Like, that's another area where friendships are formed. That community is just so warm and welcoming. Everybody loves the same things that you love. They all love fashion, thrifting, sewing, travel. And so if you want to be one of the first to get the information about the London trip, then just click the link. It's the very first link in the description below. It's a pretty special place. We'd love to have you join us. So I'll keep you up to date on that. But yep, Montreal and Toronto was a big success. It was an awesome trip. I'm so grateful to Erica for helping me put it together. I'm so grateful to the 15 people who gave up that time, traveled to meet me, and share their love of fashion, travel, sustainability, crafting. Sharing all that together was really, really a beautiful experience. So I'm really, really grateful to all 15 of those lovely ladies who came with me. So that, I think, wraps that trip up. Thank you so much for being with me right to the end, and I will see you next time on Catherine Sews. And until then, you take care.